From Brisbane, RØDE gets into headphones. The latest from Podnews.net with the podcast show, the new international festival for podcasting in London this May. RØDE has launched its first ever set of headphones. The NTH100s have been, quotes, meticulously crafted to deliver exceptional sonic performance for critical listening, from monitoring to mixing to mastering. They've also been built to wear for a long period of time too. The Sydney-based company is well known in the podcasting world for producing microphones and the RØDECaster mixer. Apple Podcast Connect has a new terms of service. Comparing the old and the new, we notice new clauses about the right to label or remove your shows, a new clause about confidentiality, and a new license clause. It may allow Apple in future to label shows, as Spotify are doing for COVID-19, and to promote guests on your show too. An Australian podcast covering a swindle got swindled themselves by a fake guest. The guest, working through a bogus PR agency, demanded payment for her appearance on listeners' The Briefing. Owner SCA said they removed the episode and didn't pay. Want a recap of Podcast Movement Evolutions 2022 from Dan Franks, one of the organisers? Why, we link to that today from our show notes and from our newsletter at podnews.net. iHeartMedia is to produce new kids-focused podcasts as part of a collaboration with Collab Inc. Freakonomics Radio is to become a radio station on SiriusXM. It's a streaming channel available to all subscribers of the platform. The shows continue wherever you listen to your podcasts. The TV show Only Murders in the Building is to return for a new season. The comedy show includes a not very flattering portrayal of podcasters and podcast fans. It'll be on Hulu on June the 28th. Podhound, a podcast discovery service, has had a redesign, and fiction podcast Greater Boston is fundraising for its fourth season. Part of the Fable and Folly podcast network, it's got 3 days left to reach its goal. It's 89% of the way there. And in People News, Steve Raises is now Executive VP of Podcasting and Audio at Paramount. He was Senior VP of Podcasts, and he'll now oversee all audio initiatives for CBS News. And Scott Menz, a former content director for rock station Triple M in Australia, has launched The Sound Business, a branded podcast company. He's based in Brisbane, just round the corner. And in podcast news, half audiobook, half intimate writer conversation. Daring to Tell features emerging and accomplished writers reading their work, then talking about it, with writer and host Michelle Rado. Rado was with WGBH Boston for 30 years. It's produced by Rado's Flying Pig Audio. Awakened Underground is launched today, an investigative talk show exploring the ancient art of healing yourselves with plant medicines and psychedelics. It's produced by Cavalry Audio and iHeart Podcasts. And No Harm in Asking is a new podcast from Michael Kerr and Eric Byron, and is the podcast that reviews podcasts. They'll be reviewing some of the top shows to discover why they're so successful and look at less well-known niche podcasts to showcase the diversity of creative approaches that podcasters can take to make their shows stand out. That podcast started this month. And this podcast is brought to you by The Podcast Show, the new international festival for podcasting in London this May. All sorts of speakers will be there. I'm going to be there in person. Also, Fern Cotton, Ross Adams from Acast, Nihal from 5 Live, Jane Garvey and Fee Glover from Fortunately with Fee and Jane, Miranda Sawyer from The Observer, and Jonathan Wall from BBC Sounds, and another 250 names being announced in the coming weeks. You can book your day pass from £55. Use promo code PODNEWS for 20% off a limited number of passes at thepodcastshowlondon.com. If you manage to save yourself £10 with our promo code, then that's enough for a nice pint of foaming ale, and we will happily take that off your hands. And we're a media partner, and we'll be there, of course. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories in full and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.